So sorry, it's a little bit bigger. All right, so that is yellow text essentially that I have on my document, one layer of yellow text. We're going to use that and apply some of the default styles. So we're looking at abstract styles right now, okay? And if I just click on any button while I have the layer selected, it's going to apply the style to the layer, all right? Also, if you hover over the little icon boxes, it shows you the name of the style. This one is white grid on orange. So you can have like a brick feeling. This next one here is rose impressions. Yeah. So these may be better if you have a flat area, like a wall surface, but we're not seeing too much of the detail because of the text. Let me jump down because we have an option here, text effects, right? So let me jump to text effect. So when I say create a style for text, there are certain styles that you don't really get the full appreciation of it if you apply it to text, such as those we were looking at before, right? They may have patterns or images that you may want to see, but the composition of the text is breaking it up. So you can't really make out what's really there. The text styles are designed to be applied to text. Look how nice this looks. And we get that with one click. So they're designed to be applied to text, right? And to highlight the text in the best way possible. So different styles, but essentially you see how we can format the text in a number of different ways in an instant, right? Let me show you how easy it would be to create a button. So I'm gonna drop a shape here around the rectangle. Sorry, wrong shape. I could use a circle, but let's do it right. So this is my rounded rectangle. I actually have a preset here, and you should as well, called buttons. There's another one called glass buttons. All right, let's start with the glass buttons. And these are my preset styles. Let's see what this green one looks like. Yeah. And then I could just throw some text on there real quick. Button. There we go. That's how easy we could create a button. We could change the style of the button by just clicking on a different style. Yeah. And let us start here and look at the composition. So the two layers that we have right now, we have, well, three layers. We have a text, the layer styles layer of text, right? And if you look at the layers palette right now, the way it looks, there's an addition to the actual layer. It says effects, and below that, we have a number of effects. Bevel and emboss, we can take them off. So as we click the eye next to it, it will remove the effect so you can see what each piece does. Bevel and emboss, inner glow, color overlay, drop shadow. You can see the original yellow text that we started with. But if we give it a drop shadow, the drop shadow adds a shadow that falls towards the back of the layer. We give it a color overlay that covers the entire layer with a color, a solid color, right? We give it an inner glow that adds a glow to the inside of the layer. We can configure the glow in different ways. We'll see how we do that. And we add a bevel and emboss. Bevel and emboss sort of gives it a 3D solid look. It's not quite as impressive here, but yeah. Let's take off the outer glow and see the effect of the bevel and emboss. So this is without the bevel, this is with the bevel. Yeah. Of course, when things get solid, they get highlights and shadows, which can tend to change the colors or your perception of the color, right? Which is likely why that happened. Right. So let's look at the button. So the button, we have the button and text over it. I'm going to take off the text for now, so we can just focus on the button. All right.
You have one by you?
Everybody with me, right?
Yes, sir.
There's one over there, and then there's one where I'm calling.
All right. So the button, let's see what the original thing looked like. We started with a black rounded rectangle, right? We added a gradient overlay. No, we didn't do that ourselves, but the style added a gradient overlay. A gradient overlay is, can anybody tell me what a gradient is? Or gradient overlay?
A gradient is a mixture of two colors.
A mixture of two or more colors, essentially. So it's a way of blending two or more colors into one another. We'll go over that in a little bit. So a gradient overlay, so we have a silver or gray and white, which gives us a silver feel. Gradient overlay, I guess that gives us the glass feel, right? A color overlay, which changes the color. Notice the effect of the gradient overlay with the color overlay, right? Then we have an inner glow, again, which adds a glow to the inside. In this case, it's a black glow. You can make the glows any color that you like. And then we have the bevel and emboss, which gives the 3D or the solid feel to it. So the button looks like a solid thing rather than a flat image. Everybody see that?
So what's the purpose of the button exactly? Like, how do you, like, where do you use it?
Okay, so where do you use the button? Well, you wouldn't use the button in Photoshop. You wouldn't print the button. You wouldn't put the button on a graphic to put up on your social media. Where would you use the button? Can anybody tell me? Can anybody answer that question? Okay,
On a
so
website?
right, you would use the button on a website, on an app, on a web app, or something like that, essentially, right? So the thing is, you've probably been thinking about graphic design as you do flyers and business cards and maybe I don't know, postcards, whatever the case might be, right? But have you ever thought that when you go to Facebook, Facebook hires graphic designers to design all of the elements that you see on Facebook, the logo, the buttons, the way the buttons interact with you when you roll over, all of that starts somewhere. And a lot of it can happen in Photoshop, right? When you look at an app like Photoshop, the icons, the buttons, they were not actually created in Photoshop. Well, they were not created by the app developers themselves. They were actually created by graphic designers, right? And then the app developers essentially put them in the right places within the application. So in the case of buttons, I know it doesn't really apply to this particular course, but you would use it on your websites, your web applications, and so on, right? For instance, let me show you how I could simulate a rollover effect with that style. So if you double click on an effect, it's going to take you directly to the window where you can configure the options for that effect, right? And look at this. By changing one option, I can have the effect of, you know, when you move you put your mouse over a button, it changes. That's called a rollover button, right? Look at me perceptually roll over this button. Roll over, roll out. Roll over, roll out. So essentially what you would do is you would save two images, right? One for the regular button, one for the rollover button. And then your web developer, whoever is programming your web page or your app, will use those two images and then make it show one image when you roll over and show another image when you're not rolling over. Essentially, that's how it will work practically. Okay. But not so practically You could use buttons for effects in your graphics. So for instance, it doesn't have to be a button you can click, but you might want to show them what the button looks like on your website. You might want to say, click the big green button on my website and have an arrow pointing to it to buy now or to order now, or whatever the case might be. Yeah, and you want to design a button for your print graphics, that can be done as well. Yeah, but in one of our very soon upcoming classes, we're going to learn about how we export for different purposes, such as print and the web, right? And essentially, if you save in items like your buttons, you will have a specific save process, so you get them in the transparent backgrounds and in the right size and everything. We'll go for that a little later. So does everybody understand so far the concept of your layer styles? Yes, no questions?
Yes, sir, I understand.
Okay, so what I'm gonna do now is, well, I showed you how you would break down the styles. We're going to apply some styles, right? To Nikesa, we're using your flyer today, as that is what I have close to me, right? I have other things, but let's use yours. I like the way yours looks. We're going to use your flyer today. And we're just going to try to enhance it a little bit. It already has a lot going on, so it doesn't really need it, right? I just want to make that clear. And you don't have to use layer styles in your design if you don't want to. Not every graphic calls for it, but we're just going to try to enhance it a little bit using our styles, all right? So let me see what I can come up with. The first thing, we have 10 minutes and then we're taking our break. So the first thing here is the shipping discount summer in that bright yellow. It looks good and it's bright, but I can think of a few things that I could do to enhance it a little bit more, right? For one, it looks really, you can read it really clear on the dark part, right? But when you get over the purple part, the lighter part, it tends to be a little bit hard on your eye. Does anybody else agree with me on that? Yes, no, maybe somewhat, not quite. Okay, I will take for granted that half of you are asleep and the other half scared to talk. And so one of the things that I could do to create a break between that, the fuzziness that we see, is to give it a drop shadow, right? A drop shadow does a number of things. One, every solid object that actually interacts with light has a shadow. I'm sure you guys know that. So I mentioned earlier that one of the things that you can do to make your graphics look real is to work on making your shadows look as real as possible, right? So I'm adding a drop shadow, little distance, which is spread a little bit. And look at this. Can everybody see the difference with the drop shadow and without the drop shadow?
Yes, sir.
Which one you think looks a little better? You have to compare them.
It dropped
Drop shadow.
With the drop shadow, right? And it's a simple style that you can add. And essentially you can see the enhancement right there. Now, that is not the only thing you can do. Let me show you another option. You could use an outer glow to do something similar. So the drop shadow falls at a certain angle. So you can see right here in the settings, and I didn't explain how we get to the style and the settings. But you can see in the settings the angle of the shadow. And let me just go over it now. So when you get to your layer styles window, if you want to apply any style, you see your styles here. We want you to apply a drop shadow. So we tick the little box next to drop shadow that adds the shadow. Then when you click on the words drop shadow, you can actually access the menu on the side here or the options for the drop shadow. And then you can configure all of the options. So for instance, if I wanted to make my drop shadow red, I could change the color right here. And then I'll have a red drop shadow. Yeah. If I wanted to drop the opacity, but let's bring it all the way up. And if I wanted to adjust the angle really refers to the angle of the light. So if the sun is shining to your left, your shadow is going to fall where?
On your right?
Right, on the opposite side, to the right. So the angle basically determines where your light source is coming from, and by consequence, where your shadow will fall. Let me increase the distance a little bit, right? So we can see if it's further away, we can see more drastically the effect of the light at different angles, right? So again, I wanted an angle of about this and not so far. The distance, as you can see, configures how far the shadow falls from the object, right? So again, it could mean how far you are from the light source. Depends on your, again, your image composition. The spread, how fuzzy the shadow is, again, how strong the light source is. If you have a bright light like the sun, you typically have a nice crisp shadow. If you're in a fluorescent light, your shadow is a little bit more fuzzy and blending into the background, right? And of course, size goes without saying. Size is the size of the shadow. All right. So that's like a small red shadow. Let's put it back black because I think black works best for this image. All right. So that's the first style option, or the first effect, which is the drop shadow. All right. I'm going to leave the thing like the counter for you guys to go through. I want you to play around with it. Really and truly, your homework is to play around with this dialog box today. All right. Find out what all of the options do. You should go through every single option there is in every single one of these styles. All right. And come up with your own freestyles of your own. And I want you to save it as your name, essentially. All right. So you can revert back to it at any time. So that's a drop shadow. Let's look at the outer glow, which is a bit simpler. The outer glow is just a glow on the outside of your object. So it puts a glow. And again, for that, we want to use black. Now you have a number of different blend modes here, right? And I'm going to give you a little pro tip here. One of the things that you can keep in mind is that whenever you want to make black disappear, right? So I just added a black shadow. Whenever you want to make black disappear, you can always just change the blend mode to screen, and that'll make all black disappear in the object. Doesn't matter what it is. It could be an image of you or whatever. And if you want to make white disappear at any point in time, but keep the other colors relatively, you would set white to multiply. That's the only tips I'm going to give you on the blend modes. For the rest of them, I want you to go through them, and at least I don't want you to understand what everything does, but at least get the idea of what you can accomplish with them. All right. So for this, I want to use black. Again, we're going to set the blend mode to normal. And I want to adjust it so that it's not so thick. You can see I can make the glow so thick that we can't see actually nothing on the outside of it. But because I like the purple in the background, I want to see some of it. We adjust it so that it does give the barrier to make the text easy to read, but without compromising the background. So again, there we have it. We have the text without the outer glow, with the outer glow. Similar to the drop shadow, but not the exact same thing. The drop shadow falls at an angle, right? The outer glow is all around. Everybody got those two so far?
Yes, sir.
Everybody see how these two simple effects can actually enhance your design, right? So at this point, I'm gonna leave the big text alone. All right. Actually, we're down to our last 2 minutes. So let's get something simple. All right. So I know it's text. And how do we change the color of our text? We would either do that for the character panel.
Character panel.
Right. Or we would click on the type the type tool and get it from the options, right? But what if it's not text? What if it's a picture of text? Or what if it's a logo? Or what if it's an image of some sort? And you wanted to change the color of it or apply a solid color, right? We can't select and fill, we know that. But you can also apply what is called a color overlay, right? So a color overlay is simple. You can see there's not much options to it, right? You have the blend mode and whatever color you want to apply, so we can change it to any color that we like. Red, blue, purple, light blue, green, yellow, right? So it's just another way to change color. Typically, we wouldn't change the color of text like that, but in the event you need to, you can. Right, so that's what the color overlay does. It simply applies a solid color over your layer. So this is with the color overlay, the color of my choice, without the color overlay. Also, you need to look at how different blending options will work with different colors. All right, so we're gonna take a break right here, and we're gonna come back in about 10 minutes. Okay, or actually 5 minutes, because we only have about half an hour left to wrap up. Okay, guys?
Yes, sir.
Right.
Yes, sir.
So I will see you guys in a little bit.